Listen to me when God is getting ready to elevate you. He doesn't always send an announcement. He doesn't always warn you with fireworks and grand signs. Instead, He starts shifting things in your life in ways that don't always feel comfortable. But hear me when I say this, discomfort is often the birthing place of destiny. Have you ever felt like everything in your life was going well, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, things started falling apart? That relationship you thought would last forever begins to crumble. The job you depended on for stability is suddenly taken away. The plans you made, the goals you set, the vision you had, it all starts to unravel before your eyes. And in that moment, it feels like chaos, confusion, and loss. But what if I told you that this disruption is not the end but the beginning of something greater? Divine disruptions are one of the most misunderstood ways that God moves. We tend to believe that when God is about to bless us, everything should start aligning perfectly, that doors should swing open effortlessly, and that people should cheer us on as we step into our next season. But more often than not, before God brings something great into your life, He first shakes up what is familiar. He allows things to break, to shift, and to change, not to destroy you, but to prepare you. Think about it. How many times have you stayed in a situation longer than you should have simply because it was comfortable? How many relationships have you held onto out of fear of being alone? How many times have you ignored that deep inner feeling that it's time to move on, but you stayed anyway because you didn't want to deal with the discomfort of change? God knows that if He doesn't shake things up, we'll remain stuck in places that no longer serve our purpose. When divine disruption happens, it often looks like loss. It feels like rejection. It feels like failure. But in reality, it is God's way of rearranging your life to fit His greater plan. He removes the things that no longer align with your future. He closes doors that you would have never closed on your own. He disconnects you from people who have already fulfilled their purpose in your journey. And even though it may not make sense in the moment, everything He allows is working together for your good. Look at the life of Joseph. He was his father's favorite, dressed in a coat of many colors, living a life of comfort and favor. But then came the disruption. His own brothers betrayed him, threw him into a pit, and sold him into slavery. If Joseph had looked at that moment as the end, he would have never seen the palace. He would have never stepped into the position that God had prepared for him. The betrayal was painful, but it was necessary. Without it, he would have never reached the place God had destined him to be. And that's how God works. Sometimes, He removes what we think we need to show us what He has actually planned for you. That job you lost. It wasn't rejection, it was redirection. That relationship that ended. It wasn't abandonment, it was alignment. That dream that didn't work out. It wasn't failure, it was preparation for something greater. Divine disruptions are God's way of forcing us to grow. He sees the version of you that you haven't even met yet. He sees your potential, your calling, and your destiny. And He knows that if you stay in the same place, surrounded by the same people, doing the same things, you will never become who He created you to be. So He shakes things up. He removes the crutches. He pushes you out of your comfort zone, not to punish you, but to position you. But here's the challenge when things start to fall apart. Most people panic instead of pausing. They complain instead of seeking clarity. They fight to hold on to what God is trying to take away. And that resistance, that unwillingness to let go, creates unnecessary pain. It's like holding onto a rope that is burning your hands, refusing to release it, even though you can see that it's causing damage. But when God disrupts, the best thing you can do is surrender. God is never random. Every disruption has a purpose. Every shift has a reason. He doesn't waste pain. He doesn't allow confusion without a greater plan. And the sooner you recognize that, the sooner you will begin to move in alignment with His will. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Start asking, what is God trying to show me? Instead of fighting the change, lean into it. Trust that if he is allowing something to be removed, it is only because he is making room for something greater. Resistance is not a sign that you are failing. It is often a sign that you are stepping into something powerful. The moment you decide to elevate, to grow, to step into a new season, resistance will come. It won't show up lightly. It won't come in small, manageable doses. It will come with force. The attacks will intensify. The obstacles will increase. The enemy will do everything in his power to make you doubt, to make you question, to make you turn back before you reach what God has prepared for you. This is the moment where many people give up. They start off strong, full of faith, full of excitement for what God has promised them. But the moment resistance shows up, they shrink. They start wondering if maybe they heard God wrong. Maybe they aren't meant for this. Maybe this path is too hard. But hear this: the enemy does not fight what he does not fear. If you are experiencing resistance, it is because something valuable is on the other side. Look at how resistance shows up in life. The moment you decide to break free from toxic relationships, that's when people suddenly start clinging to you. The moment you decide to chase your dreams, that's when doubt starts whispering in your ear. The moment you make up your mind to walk in faith, that's when fear tries to grip you. Resistance is a confirmation that you are stepping into something greater than yourself. One of the greatest tricks of the enemy is to convince you that obstacles mean you are on the wrong path. He wants you to believe that if it were truly meant for you, it would be easy. That if it was really God's plan, everything would fall into place without a struggle. But that is not how elevation works. The greater the calling, the greater the opposition. The closer you get to your breakthrough, the more intense the battle becomes. Look at David. Before he became king, he had to face Goliath. Before he stepped into the palace, he had to endure years of being chased by Saul. Before he wore the crown, he had to go through battles, betrayals, and moments where it seemed like God had forgotten him. But every battle was proof that the anointing on his life was real. Every attack was confirmation that God had something powerful in store for him. This is why you cannot allow resistance to make you retreat. Some people get so close to their breakthrough, but the pressure becomes too much, so they turn back. They walk away from what God was about to bless them with because the journey got difficult. But when you understand that resistance is part of the process, you stop running from it and start pushing through it. The enemy will use distractions, delays, and disappointments to try to break your spirit. You will face setbacks that make you question if moving forward is even worth it. You will encounter situations that test your patience, your endurance, and your faith. The people you thought would support you may start pulling away. The resources you thought you could rely on may start drying up. The doors you expected to open may remain closed. But none of these things mean that you are on the wrong path. When the enemy sees that you are about to step into something powerful, he will throw everything he can at you to stop you. He will try to make you second-guess your calling. He will try to plant seeds of doubt in your mind. He will try to make you so weary, so frustrated, so exhausted that you give up before you ever see the promise fulfilled. But you have to recognize his tactics. You have to know that every attack is proof that you are moving in the right direction. Resistance is a test. How bad do you want it? How deep is your faith? Will you keep pressing forward even when everything in you wants to quit? Will you trust God's plan even when the journey gets hard? Because if you can endure the resistance, if you can keep walking even when the path is filled with obstacles, what is waiting on the other side will be greater than anything you could have imagined. There comes a moment in every believer's life when God isolates them. Not because he has abandoned them, not because he is punishing them, but because he is preparing them. Divine isolation is one of the clearest signs that God is about to do something big in your life. You will begin to notice that people who were once close to you start to drift away. Conversations that used to be filled with excitement now feel empty. The places you used to enjoy no longer bring you fulfillment. And in that moment, you may feel like something is wrong. But nothing is wrong. God is shifting you. When God is about to elevate you, he separates you. He pulls you away from distractions, from unnecessary noise, from relationships that no longer serve your purpose. And at first, it feels uncomfortable. Why? Because humans crave connection. We desire companionship. We want to be surrounded by people who understand us. But what happens when the very people you are holding on to are the ones keeping you from your next level? Divine isolation is God's way of getting your attention. When you are surrounded by too many voices, it becomes hard to hear His voice. When you are constantly engaged in the opinions of others, you stop seeking His direction. And sometimes, the only way for God to get through to you is to place you in a season where the distractions are removed. Think about Moses. He spent 40 years in the wilderness before God called him to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. Why? Because the wilderness was his training ground. It was in isolation that Moses learned how to hear God clearly. It was in isolation that he was shaped into the leader he needed to be. If Moses had remained in Pharaoh's palace, surrounded by comfort and luxury, he would have never stepped into his true assignment. The same is true for you. God is not isolating you to harm you. He is isolating you to prepare you. He is removing you from certain environments because they cannot sustain the future He has planned for you. He is pulling you away from certain friendships because they are no longer aligned with where He is taking you. He is closing certain doors because they no longer fit the vision He has for your life. But here's where most people struggle. They fight the isolation. They try to force connections that God is trying to sever. They hold on to relationships that have already served their purpose. They resist the shift because they fear being alone. But being alone does not mean you are lonely. It means you are being positioned for something greater. When you feel isolated, don't rush to fill the silence with distractions. Use that time to grow. Use that time to develop your spiritual strength. Use that time to listen. God is speaking in your isolation, but if you are too busy trying to escape it, you will miss what He is trying to show you. Isolation is not rejection, it is refinement. Look at Jesus. Before He began His public ministry, He spent 40 days alone in the wilderness. No crowds, no followers, no distractions, just Him and God. And in that solitude, He was tested, strengthened, and prepared for the mission ahead. If Jesus needed a season of isolation before stepping into His calling, why would we think we don't need the same? Divine isolation is where God removes what is unnecessary and strengthens what is essential. It is where He teaches you to rely on Him alone. It is where He strips away your dependence on people and deepens your trust in His plan. It is where He refines your character, sharpens your vision, and prepares you for what is coming next. And while it may feel lonely at times, remember this: God isolates before He elevates. He separates before He promotes. He prepares before He reveals. And when you come out of this season, you will not be the same person you were when you entered it. You will be stronger, wiser, and more aligned with His purpose for your life. When God is about to give you something big, you will start noticing doors opening in ways you never expected. Opportunities will come from places you didn't seek, from people you never reached out to, and from situations that seemed impossible just a short time ago. These are not coincidences. They are divine appointments. They are moments where God is aligning your path with the next level He has prepared for you. But here's what makes these opportunities unusual: they won't always make sense. Sometimes they will come disguised as challenges. Sometimes they will look too big for you, too overwhelming, too outside of your comfort zone. And that's the test. Will you trust that God is making a way, or will you shrink back in fear? Think about Joseph. He was thrown into a pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery, and falsely accused in Potiphar's house. But even in the midst of those hardships, doors kept opening. He found favor in prison. He found favor with Pharaoh. And in one moment he went from being a prisoner to the second most powerful man in Egypt. His opportunity didn't come in a way that made sense. It came through adversity. It came through trials. But each door that opened was a step closer to the promise God had spoken over his life. This is why you must stay spiritually alert. Not every opportunity will come wrapped in comfort. Not every open door will look like a blessing at first. Some doors will require you to stretch beyond what you thought was possible. Some doors will require you to walk by faith and not by sight. Some doors will require you to step into positions you don't feel qualified for. But if God is opening it, it's because He knows what He placed inside you. Unusual opportunities often come when you least expect them. You may have been working in obscurity for years, wondering if anyone even sees what you do. Then, suddenly the right person takes notice. The right conversation happens. The right moment presents itself, and everything changes. That is not luck. That is divine orchestration. That is God setting you up for a breakthrough. But here's where many people miss it. They hesitate. They overanalyze. They start looking at their own abilities instead of trusting in God's power. They talk themselves out of opportunities because they don't feel ready. But God does not call the qualified. He qualifies the called. He is not waiting for you to be perfect. He is waiting for you to step forward in obedience. Look at Peter. He was just an ordinary fisherman when Jesus called him. But the moment he obeyed, the moment he left his boat behind and followed Christ, he stepped into a purpose greater than anything he could have imagined. The same is true for you. When the opportunity comes, you must be willing to move. You must be willing to trust that if God is opening the door, He will also equip you to walk through it. This is why preparation is key. You don't get ready when the opportunity arrives, you get ready before it comes. David was anointed as king long before he sat on the throne. But in the meantime, he kept tending sheep. He kept developing his skills. He kept preparing for the moment when God would elevate him. And when the time came, he was ready. God is positioning you for something bigger than you can see right now. He is placing you in the right conversations, aligning you with the right people, setting up the right circumstances. But when the opportunity arrives, will you be ready to step into it?
One of the most liberating yet hardest truths to accept is this: no one owes you anything. No one owes you success. No one owes you opportunities. And no one owes you an easy path. The moment you truly understand this, you stop waiting for things to be handed to you. You stop expecting people to recognize your potential without effort. You stop assuming that just because you're a good person, life will automatically reward you. Instead, you start focusing on the only thing that matters: the work you're willing to put in. A lot of people waste years of their lives feeling frustrated, bitter, or disappointed because they believe the world should be fair. They think, I work hard, so I should be successful by now. I have talent, so why hasn't someone given me a chance? I've been loyal, so why don't I have the life I deserve? But life doesn't operate on fairness, it operates on cause and effect. What you put in consistently over time determines what you get out of it, not what you feel you deserve, not what you expect from others. Just the work you do day in and day out. Many people have potential. Many people have dreams. But very few people are willing to work relentlessly for them. And that's why so few actually succeed. Because at some point, your work ethic will separate you. Your discipline, your consistency, your resilience, those things will set you apart from the ones who are still waiting for something to magically happen. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that if they struggle long enough, someone will eventually step in to save them. They think that if they just keep talking about how hard things are, someone will feel sorry for them and fix their situation. But that's not how the world works. No one is coming to save you. No one is sitting around thinking about how they can make your dreams come true. Because everyone is too busy trying to figure out their own lives. And the sooner you realize this, the sooner you stop waiting and start working. Another reason people fail to get what they want is because they underestimate how much work it actually takes. They start something, put in effort for a few months, and when they don't see instant results, they assume it's not working. They assume the system is rigged against them, or that they're just unlucky. But in reality, success is not a short-term effort, it's a long-term commitment. The ones who make it aren't necessarily the smartest, the most talented, or the luckiest. They are simply the ones who refuse to stop. And working for what you want doesn't just mean putting in hours, it means developing the right mindset. It means understanding that failure isn't an excuse to quit, it's part of the process. It means taking responsibility for your own growth, instead of blaming circumstances or other people. It means being honest with yourself about the areas where you need to improve, and actually doing something about it. There's a common belief that successful people had it easier, that they were just in the right place at the right time. But what people don't see is the sacrifices they made, the risks they took, the nights they spent working while everyone else was asleep. What they don't see is the unseen effort, the small, unglamorous steps that added up over time. And that's why so many people give up. They aren't willing to put in that level of work. They want the reward without the struggle. But here's the truth. You don't get what you wish for, you get what you work for. If you want financial freedom, you have to work for it. If you want to build a strong body, you have to train for it. If you want to master a skill, you have to practice relentlessly. There are no shortcuts. No one is going to hand you a perfect life on a silver platter. The only way you will ever have what you want is if you earn it. One of the most life-changing decisions you can ever make is to take full responsibility for your life. Not partial responsibility. Not responsibility only when things go well. Full responsibility for your actions, your choices, your growth, and your future. Because until you do that, you will always feel powerless. You will always find excuses. You will always have someone or something to blame. And as long as you're blaming something outside of yourself, you're giving away your power. Too many people are stuck in the mindset their circumstances define them. They think, I wasn't born into wealth, so I can't be successful. I never had the right guidance, so I can't change my life. People treated me unfairly, so I have no choice but to struggle. And while those things may be true, while life may not have been fair to you, it does not mean you can't take control from this point forward. The past is not an excuse to stay stuck. It is a lesson, a reference point, a foundation. But what happens next? That's entirely up to you. Taking responsibility doesn't mean blaming yourself for everything that has happened to you. It doesn't mean ignoring the challenges or pretending that life has always been easy. It simply means acknowledging that you are in control of how you respond to it. It means recognizing that even if life knocked you down, you still have the power to get back up. It means understanding that your decisions moving forward will shape your future, not your past. Not your circumstances, not what other people did or didn't do for you. People who refuse to take responsibility for their lives always look for someone to rescue them. They wait for the right opportunity, the right person, the right moment. And because they're always waiting, they never actually start. They never take ownership of their dreams, their actions, their potential. They live in a cycle of hoping and complaining, but never truly taking control. And years later, they wonder why nothing changed. On the other hand, the people who do take responsibility, the ones who say, this is my life, and I'm going to make something of it, those are the people who create real change. Those are the ones who refuse to be victims of their circumstances. Those are the ones who take action even when things seem unfair, even when resources are limited, even when they don't have support. Because they understand something powerful: as long as you blame something outside of yourself, you have no control. But the moment you accept responsibility, you take back your power. One of the hardest truths to accept is that your life is a reflection of your choices. Every habit, every action, every decision, big or small, has led you to where you are today. And that can either feel discouraging or empowering. Because if your choices created this reality, then your choices can also change it. You are not stuck. You are not limited. You are simply the result of patterns that you have the power to break. People who take responsibility don't make excuses. They don't say, I don't have time. They make time. They don't say, I don't have the resources. They find a way. They don't say, I don't know how. They learn. This mindset shift from helplessness to responsibility is what separates those who thrive from those who struggle. Because the moment you decide, I am responsible for my future, you start seeing opportunities where others see obstacles. You start finding solutions where others see problems. You start creating your own path instead of waiting for someone to pave it for you. Taking responsibility also means letting go of the need for validation. Because when you're in control of your own life, you don't need permission to go after your dreams. You don't need everyone to agree with you. You don't need people to believe in you before you believe in yourself. Too many people let their progress be dictated by the opinions of others. They let fear of judgment hold them back. They worry about what people will think if they fail. But the truth is, no one else is responsible for your happiness, your growth, or your success. Only you are. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you stop looking outside yourself for answers. You stop waiting for motivation and start developing discipline. You stop hoping for someone to guide you and start figuring things out. You stop allowing circumstances to dictate your future and start creating the life you actually want. Because once you take responsibility, you take control. And once you take control, everything changes.
When God is about to give you something big, He doesn't just drop it into your lap without preparation. He takes you through a process, one that refines, stretches, and strengthens you. The discomfort is not a sign of defeat. It is proof that you are on the brink of something greater. You will face intense spiritual warfare because the enemy knows what's coming. You will experience divine discontent as God shifts your spirit towards something new. You will feel doors closing because He is making room for better ones to open. You will find yourself in a season of isolation because He needs your focus, your obedience, and your full attention. Every sign, every test, and every trial is working together to prepare you for what God has already ordained. But here's the key: don't give up in the process. Don't let the challenges make you doubt what God has promised you. Don't let the delays convince you that He has forgotten you. What is coming is greater than what has been, but you must endure the preparation. Stay rooted in prayer. Keep your faith strong. Keep pressing forward. Because when God is about to bless you, no force in hell can stop it. What He has for you has already been written. The only thing you must do is trust Him, follow the signs, and prepare your heart to receive what He is about to release in your life.